I've met many of you online through emails after the webinars, and have just enjoyed the experience. So, the interesting thing though is that even though I've been doing these now for, well, a couple of years, I still get nervous doing these sorts of things. And well, anyways, the reason why I mention that is one of my ways of getting over anxiety is to sing. So I thought that's gotten to be a bit of my trademark now. Whenever I work with kids, we do a few songs, and so I thought a good song for this time of year, especially those East Coasters and Midwesterners, is a good song about April. We're finally feeling the beginning of spring here in Ohio, and so I thought this would be a great song. In fact, if you look out the window here in Kent, Ohio, you'd be finding April showers going on. So those of you who know the song, how about singing along with me? And those of you who don't, just follow along, and we'll work on it afterwards with you guys here. April showers. La la la, me. Okay, we got it. When April showers may come your way, they bring the flowers that bloom in May. So when it's raining, have no regrets, because it isn't raining rain. You know it's raining violets. And when you see clouds up on a hill, you know they'll bring crowds of daffodils. So just keep looking for a bluebird and listening for his song whenever April showers come along. What a nice song that is. And I'm always looking for great songs to share with folks there. Now, people often ask me this, and I've talked about this in previous seminars, why I sing, and I've got a very simple answer to that. It's actually quite complex, but the main reason is it's reading. One of the things we know from 100 years of research in reading, that is the best way to become a good reader is to read a lot. Now we can get kids to read more by giving them more time to read, but there's another way of getting them to read more, and that's to expand what counts as reading. When I went to school, we used to sing all the time, recite poetry, put on plays, play word games, and sometimes I wonder why we don't do these sort of things as much as perhaps we used to. And people have told me, well, there's no research behind it, Rasinski. Oh yeah, there's plenty of research, and there's more coming. But the idea is we want to expand what counts as reading for our kids, and because when they do that, they'll be reading and reading more and enjoying it for that matter as well. But there's another reason for today's song, and that's because songs are filled with wonderful words. Our session today kind of builds on my previous one. It's on vocabulary, building kids' awareness and use of and knowledge of words and word meanings. Let's go to that song we just I shared with you, and look at the words that appear there. I just did a quick review of that, and I saw the word regret, violets, daffodils, bluebirds. These are the words that I think Isabel Beck might call tier 2 words. They're the words that we don't use too much in our oral language, but we might see more often when we read. They're in written text a lot. And these are the words we want kids to learn there. So it's interesting. It doesn't matter what you read, as long as you read something, you're not only going to become a better reader, you're going to be exposed to interesting words that are going to build your vocabulary. I'll have more to say about that in just a minute, but let's do a little review here. In my previous seminars, or webinars, I guess I should say, I've shared this model with you. I call it the bridge model. I'm going to click on my little marker here and say that, we know we have to teach words, and we know we have to teach comprehension to our students. Fluency is this bridge that links the two together. And I'm not going to go into any great detail. We've talked about this on a couple of occasions, but most of my previous sessions have been focused on this thing called reading fluency. But today I want to move on to another important area of reading, and that's vocabulary. I want to talk about vocabulary with you guys for a few minutes. And the neat thing about vocabulary is it's so easy to teach kids, and it's so important there. Let me share with you a little bit of some facts about vocabulary before we move on. We know that vocabulary knowledge is strongly and consistently associated with reading comprehension and overall reading proficiency. That is, when children not only can sound out but know what the words mean that they encounter, the more words they know, the more likely they are to be good readers, proficient readers, good comprehenders. I was just looking over Bob Marzano's book with Julia Sims on vocabulary in the Common Core, and they cite a dozen or so studies that have shown the value of vocabulary when it comes to not only reading but general knowledge, one's general knowledge as well. We also know that our language, English, is quite a remarkable language. Our English lexicon, I've heard it say, is the largest in the world. There's more words in English than any other language in the world, and it continues to grow. And you know, of course, from a point of view of a writer or a speaker, that gives us a lot of choices to choose when we write and when we speak. But of course, on the other side of that, that means there are a lot of words that children need to learn. And what we do know is that kids learn. You know, there's about 1,000 words every year, or even more, and that's a lot of words. If you take 1,000 words and divide it into 36 school weeks, you're talking about, what, 30 or so words a week? That's a lot. That's a lot. That's more than that 20-word list that I remember getting as a student every week. And the other thing is that students' vocabulary growth has not been all that robust. At least some of the research is suggesting that. At best, it's been stagnant over the past 20 years here. And that's a bit of a problem, I think. What we find is that vocabulary is important. Vocabulary in English is large, and yet our students don't seem to be growing in it. And makes you wonder if perhaps that's one of the reasons why our reading scores have been, nationally in the United States anyways, have been relatively flat over the past 20 plus years or so. Here's a couple articles I've extracted just recently over the last year or so from the Wall Street Journal. Students fall flat in vocabulary tests. They talked about in these international studies where our students in the United States, at least, did not do quite as well as we expected, nor did they compare well against other nations. A similar report came out of Huffington Post. If you look at the second paragraph, it says that our scores are troubling but not expected. Average performance on the U.S. Department of Education national exams was mostly stagnant and at low levels between 2009 and 2011. Even our highest performers lost ground during this time here. So we're seeing, you know, this disturbing trend here, despite the importance. Dr. Edie Hirsch, quite a notable scholar from the University of Virginia, wrote this article that appeared in one of our Wall Street Journal. Vocabulary declines with unspeakable results, and he makes the case that, you know, not only vocabulary for reading, but vocabulary for income, as our incomes have relative incomes have declined, or as vocabulary has declined over the years. He claims that right along with that comes income, family income, and so on. So it's definitely a concern here. So what I'd like to share with you then today is ways that we might be able to help our students. Simple ways, not terribly difficult, but that have been shown to work here. So let's start, first of all, with the best way. What's the best way to teach vocabulary? Probably got your attention with that one. You probably got your notepads out and ready to write down my next slide. Well, unfortunately, there is no best way. At least I don't know a best way. I know good ways. I don't know a best way. But I do know the worst way. And that's what I'm leading to. Does this look familiar to anybody in the audience there? This is my son, Mike Rasinski, who is now in his mid-30s. When he was in 5th grade, I believe it was, he was in the talented and gifted class in the school. And so instead of getting 20 words every week like most of the other students, he and his talented and gifted classmates got 50, 60 a week. But it was the same routine. He'd get these words on a Monday. He'd have to look them up in a dictionary, memorize the spelling and the definition, took the test on Friday, got an A or B, and had them forgotten by the following Sunday or the following Monday there. If your goal is for students to, you know, learn words for a week and then forget about them, this is the way to go. Of course, we want students to learn words for a lifetime. He's now an adult, and occasionally I'll tease him with these words. I'll throw them at him. I say, hey, Mike, what does this word mean, garrulous? What does restive mean? What is rueful? And although he's 35 years old and he's an officer in the Air Force right now, he hardly knows any of those words. In fact, I I don't know many of them myself, to be honest with you. Just because a word is hard doesn't mean it's worth teaching. Now, if any of you do something like this, please know that I'm not trying to put anybody down. I did exactly the same thing when I taught school. I didn't know what else to do, so we tend to fall back on the way we were taught. It's well-meaning, but it's not terribly effective. Take a look at some of these words, by the way. These were words that came off of that worksheet I just shared with you. Restive, reverie, rosier, rueful, sallow, sardonic, savant. When was the last time any of you used any of these words there? They're not words that we use very often in writing or in oral speech. And so you got to ask yourself, just because it's hard does not necessarily mean it's worth teaching. So let's get that out of the way. Let's try to avoid these rote memorization type approaches. What I'd like to share with you are 4 things. There's many others, and maybe the scientific learning folks will give me a chance to talk about some more in the coming months. But what I'd like to share with you are things, simple ones: noticing, or word harvesting, I call it, word games, word building, and word patterns. These are 4 that I think would make a huge difference in our students' lives if we could begin to integrate them into our classrooms here. First of all, let's start with noticing, or word harvesting. I had an old professor. I did my master's degree at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and I hope we might have some Omahans there. And Dr. Cushenberry, I heard him say this on a couple of occasions. He's passed away now, but I really like this quote. He says, "Teaching is the process of making visible that which is normally invisible." It's us. It's up to us to help our kids see things that aren't apparent to them all the time there. Well, let's think about that in reading. When we read, what do we pay attention to? We pay attention to the story. We pay attention to the main idea. We pay attention to the characters. Do we pay attention to the words? Well, and sometimes, and some of us do. But I think for the point of students, their main task is to pay attention to the story, the text itself, and the meaning that the author's trying to get to the students. It's our job then as teachers, it seems, to help students notice these words there, and we can do it in very simple ways here. Now, the very fact that an author is published usually means that one of the things they use to get published or to make their text so noteworthy is the vocabulary that they use there. And I'm going to share with you an example here. William Steig is one of my favorite authors here, and one of his most famous books is Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. It won the Caldecott Award back in the late 1960s. It's a terrific book, and it still is a wonderful book. It's about this little donkey by the name of Sylvester who finds a magic pebble, and, well, it causes him all kinds of trouble. What I'd like for you to do is become a second grader, maybe a first grader. This book is a picture book intended for primary grades, and I'd like to read to you the first 2 or 3 pages of this book here. And what I'd like for you to do is listen not only for the story that Mr. Steig teaches or tells us, but also for any interesting words that he may have used. We're going to harvest them. We're going to notice them. All right, so here's the story. Here's the way it starts. I'm going to read it to you as fluently as I can. Sylvester Duncan lived with his mother and father on Acorn Road in Oatsdale. One of his hobbies was collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. On a rainy Saturday during vacation, he found a quite extraordinary one. It was flaming red, shiny, and perfectly round. As he was studying this remarkable pebble, he began to shiver, probably from excitement, and the rain felt cold on his back. "I wish it would stop raining," he said. And to his great surprise, the rain stopped. It didn't stop gradually as rains usually do. It ceased. The drops vanished on the way down. Everything was, and the sun was shining as if the rain had never existed. And so the story is about what he does with this pebble and how it causes some grief in his life. But did you notice the words that Mr. Steig used there? This is grade children. And when I asked the kids, I was actually sharing this with them not long ago. These are second graders. What words did you notice? What words do you think were the interesting words? The words I have highlighted here in red. These are the ones that they chose. Pebbles, unusual, extraordinary, remarkable, gradually, ceased, vanished, and existed. And there's probably a few more there, maybe the word shiver. Aren't those wonderful words? These are words that the author used to make his story richer and more inviting for an audience. Now, so we need to help our students notice these words. Now, what we do in our reading clinic and my work with kids is what we do is we harvest them. I like that idea of harvesting these words. We pull them out of context and we put them on a word wall, a daily word wall there. And then, of course, we read these words every day, pebbles gradually and so on. But we also encourage the children to use the words, not only in their oral language, but also in their written language as well. And of course, if you want your students to use these words, I think we as teachers and principals, we need to use the words ourselves. They're not words that we often use in our own oral language, so we really have to make a determined effort to get these into our language. You might mention to some of your students, tomorrow as they do their homework, I don't want to hear from you that your homework is vanished when you bring it in tomorrow. Or you might have some children goofing off in the back of the room. Cease that behavior right now. There, when we're going out for recess, better watch those pebbles on the playground. Don't want anybody to slip on them and fall down. There, this is an extraordinary paper you turned in. There, a remarkable response. You see, we learn these words by using them, but it's our job to help kids notice them to begin with. Now, I'm going to count these words here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 words there. Now let's do a little bit of math. I'm sure that everybody in the audience reads to your students every day. We know the power of that. What would happen if we read to our kids every day, and we harvested 8 words every day? Let's do the math. 180 school days times 8 words a day. You're talking over 1,400 words that children have chosen, they have ownership over, and they added to their vocabulary there. What a simple thing to do, yet how incredibly powerful, and it ties into things we're already doing. And by the way, I might add that not only will this build vocabulary for reading, it's going to build vocabulary for their writing as well. I've never seen a writing rubric that doesn't include word choice. When children want to use the word little stones, put pebbles instead when they're writing. When they want to use the word stop, put cease in when they're writing. When they want to use the word great, put extraordinary in. Those substitutions are going to make their writing just a little bit better as well. So getting our kids to notice these words whenever we use them, and probably the best way is when we read to our students the books that we read. Well, let's move on. Word games. I'm a great lover of games. My family and I get together quite often, and we'll dig out a board game or a card game, and it's really remarkable. I'm using that remarkable word. How many of those games that we play are word games? We play Scrabble, Boggle, Balderdash, Wheel of Fortune, Password, Buzzword, Taboo, and they're all word games. Isn't that interesting? We live in a world where we're surrounded by games there. This is a game I love to play. We get our local newspaper, and I play this game there. It's called the word game. What happens, I should have expanded this a little bit bigger so you can see it, but they give you a word. In this case, the word is Jasmine, and you're supposed to try to make up as many words as you can from the letters of Jasmine. It's something I enjoy doing, and my wife's not too much into that, but she likes to do the word jumble that's in our local newspaper as well there. And what we find interesting is we get better at it. We get better at it as we do it. I'm sure you do the same. Maybe you play words with friends on your iPhone. And did you notice when you play those games, you get better at it? Well, folks, there's a name for that. There's another name for that. It's called learning. When you get better at something, it means you're learning it there. How about what kind of games do you play? Well, here's one of my favorites. I call it Wordo there, and it's probably got a bunch of different names, but word bingo, essentially what it is. It's a 5x5 matrix. You pass it out to your students. Every student gets a blank sheet like this, and you put 25 words or 24 words up on the whiteboard there. These could be science words, social studies words, words taken from our word wall, and the children just randomly put them in one word per box. Then you might have a free spot also. And then what we do, and I play it with children, is I call out the definition, and the children have to match the word to the definition, and they put a little bean or a counter over it. And when they get 5 in a row, 5 across, 5 up and down, 5 diagonal, they call out Wordo, and we have a little prize for them there. It's a simple thing, but Oh my gosh, I still remember not long ago we ended up playing with a group of third and fourth graders for about an hour. Wordo, they just didn't want to stop playing. What a simple game such as that. But think of all the games that we play. And you know the point I often make is who are the students in school who never get to play the games? It's often the kids who struggle in reading, right? The games are only for the work's done, and well, these are the kids who hardly ever get the work done. I think we need to make word study feel like a game. Think of all the games that we could borrow from television or our board games and put them into our classrooms. There. I've got another game I want to share with you a little in a few minutes, but let's move on. Word building. Word building is the next word I'd like to share with you. We use this word in education a lot, constructivism. You know, that whole notion of John Dewey. We learn by making our own understanding. We learn by making. We learn by creating. How do you learn science? You do science. How do you learn social studies? You create a little United Nations or city council in your classroom. Well, how do you do that with words? Well, there's a variety of ways. I'm going to share with you a study that was done by some folks. Well, the one, a couple. There's some great names here. The one I want to mention to you is Isabel Beck. She's one of my heroes, and of course, I know Chuck Perfetti as well. But all these folks are wonderful. Isabel is probably one of our leading experts in the area of vocabulary. And several years ago, in Scientific Studies in Reading, she wrote this article with her colleagues, Bruce McCandless, Rebecca Sandick, called Focusing Attention on Decoding for Children with Poor Reading Skills, Design and Preliminary as of a Word Building Intervention. The operative word there is word building. There. What it was an activity that looked like this. I just pulled this right out of the article. These are young children, and they do this for 5 or 10 minutes a day. Imagine that they have something like letter tiles or little cards, and they start with the word past, P-A-S-T, in front of them. And then what the teacher does is guides them to build words, adding, subtracting letters. So the teacher might say, okay, class, let's take away a letter from past to make the word pat. What sound don't you hear in pat that's in past? And of course, that's the S sound. Take that out, now you got pat. Okay, now let's go from pat to pot. Where does the sound change? So you notice with something, you might talk about you pat a dog, you boil water in a pot. You're talking about the sound, the spelling, the meaning of the words as you go through this. And the word, each new word is built on the previous word here. Done on a regular basis, what Dr. McCandless and his colleagues found is found in this abstract. I just pulled this straight from the article itself. It said what they found was doing this on a regular basis, children, relative to children who were randomly assigned to a control group or an alternative intervention, children assigned to this word-building intervention demonstrated significantly greater improvements in standardized tests of word decoding, reading comprehension, phonological awareness. There. Reading comprehension. Isn't that interesting? We're working on words, but we're improving comprehension there. And I would suspect that if they tested vocabulary or meaning of the words, they would have found growth there. Well, I kind of took this idea and I turned it into a game myself. I mean, here's a combination of word building and game. I think many of you who read any of my work, you're probably familiar with what I'm talking about here. I call them word ladders. And I'd like to do a word ladder with you if I could right now. So if you have a pencil or paper, you might want to write this one down and share it with your students sometime in the next several days here. I'm going to start with the word planet, P-L-A-N-E-T. Now, I often will mention that that's a Greek word, and it's based upon a Greek word, and it means traveler or wanderer. The ancient Greeks would look up at the night sky, and they noticed that these dimly lit stars actually moved across the night sky, and they didn't know that they weren't stars, so they gave them that special name, planet or wanderer. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make a ladder of words here. Each new word is based upon the previous word here. Now, I have the children write the words out. I think there's some value in actually writing the words out. But let's see what happens here. Take away a letter from planet and make a vehicle that flies in the sky. That would be a plane. Take away another letter, make another word for prepare. Teachers always prepare, or they do lesson plans for tomorrow. Take away another letter and make a word that describes something you might fry fish in. That is a pan. Okay, now change a letter in pan and make a word that means if you're able to do something. Change a letter in pan, and what do you have? You say, I can do it. Change a letter in can and make a word that is another word for an automobile, car. Add a letter to car and make a word that means when you give aid to someone or something, you might say, helping it out, you might say you are giving it good care. All right. Now change a letter in care and make a word. We're at this time of the year when in the Christian tradition we are going to be celebrating Easter, and we talk about the Easter bunny. Well, another word for a bunny or a rabbit, change a letter in care and you have hair. Now that might be a word I want kids to notice there. That's not one that you might use a lot, but so I'd put it on the word wall there. Now, rearrange the letters in hair, H-A-R-E, and we might talk about the fact that it's a phonogram or words, two words that sound the same. I'm not at a loss for words myself right now, but H-A-I-R. But this time, rearrange the letters in H-A-R-E and make a word that describes something we do with our ears. We hear. Add a letter to hear to make something my cardiologist checks on me every year. That's my heart. Add a letter to heart to make a fancy name for a fireplace. That would be a hearth. Well, that's another word I want kids to notice. So that one goes up there on the word wall. And here's the last word. Subtract a letter from hearth to make a word that goes with our first word, planet. Subtract a letter from hearth to make a word that goes with planet, and that would be, everyone got it, Earth, planet Earth there. So that's the way I do my word ladders. The first and last words go together there. And the reason why I shared this one in particular with you is April 22nd, most of you know, is Earth Day. So you might want to use this either in anticipation of or celebration of Earth Day come in about 2.5 weeks or so. Now, I'm not above shamelessly promoting myself, so if you are interested in these books, I have written several of them. They're called Daily Word Ladders, and you can find them pretty much anywhere you want. They look like this, by the way. The publisher said we should go up a word ladder, so in this case, we have the word ship, and the last word up here is the word fleet, a group of ships there. But I love mentioning a little story that happened about a year ago. I was actually sharing one of this with a group of teachers, and a teacher said to me, "Hey, Rasinski, you know what? These word ladders, they feel like a crossword puzzle for kids." And I had to admit, there are features of a crossword. You have the clues, you have the number of letters with each word, and the words are interlocked with each other, much like in a crossword. Well, almost immediately after hearing that teacher say that, another teacher in the room said, "Hey, Rasinski, that lady over there is right." And she said, "I don't know anybody who likes to do crossword puzzles who doesn't have a large vocabulary, is not a good reader, not a good speller." Those of you out there who might like to do the daily crossword puzzles, and I would put my money on you if we had to have a vocabulary test today. But isn't it interesting how we notice those kinds of things? Real life. John Dewey says what we do in school should reflect what happens in real life, and I think games and this type of game are things that we see happening all the time here. So word building activities are a great way. Well, what have we covered? We've talked about noticing words, word games, word building, both Isabel Beck's way and my way, and then I'd just like to finish with this idea of word patterns here. Word patterns. What we know from our cognitive psychologist, and I think when Dr. Souza talks in a few weeks, he might mention this, but we seem to know that the brain has this ability to detect patterns in things. You look at my little design here, and you notice the 3x3 matrix. You notice that the dark flowers there are in a diagonal. If you're in an office right now and you look at the ceiling, you probably notice the way the ceiling tiles are arranged. This pattern that we easily detect as human beings, and what these patterns do is they help us negotiate our world more efficiently there. When we talk about linguistic patterns, and if you happen to be working with younger children, we often talk about word families, or what have often been called not only word families, but also rhymes or phonograms there. These are combinations of a vowel and some consonants that have a very consistent sound to them. And they can help students more efficiently decode a word or sound out a word. For example, if you see the word S-I-G-H-T, sight, how many letters do you see when you decode that word? Now, some of you might be saying, well, let's see, I see 6 letters, but I would argue that I'd say you see 2 letters. You see S, and then I-G-H-T is like 1 unit, or 1 letter, and you process it that way. It makes it a much more efficient way of processing words. Well, these word families here that I've listed here were identified by good old Dr. Edward Fry in an article that he wrote called "The Most Common Phonograms in the Reading Teacher." According to Dr. Fry, if your students learn these 36 or 38 word families, they will have the ability to spell and decode 654 one-syllable words. Not a bad batting average, right? And that's only the one-syllable words. You know, if we're talking about the AM says am, that can help you with one-syllable words like ham, sam, and jam. But what about those multi-syllabic words? It can help you with Alabama, ambulance, hamster, camera, family, literally thousands of words that are out there. So, you know, one of the things we want our students to do is learn to recognize these patterns because they're so helpful in decoding. But that's only part of it. There's another set of linguistic patterns that we can use as well with our children, and I talked a little bit about this in my previous my previous webinar. Morphemes, or Latin and Greek roots. We know that so many of our words in English are derived from Latin and Greek. They're most of our academic words, most of our new words that are technologically oriented. They come from Latin and Greek, and they're patterns again. It's the same idea that if you learn one of these Latin and Greek morphemes or roots, it can help you with lots and lots and lots of words here. Let's stick with our little pattern here, or I'm sorry, not the pattern, but that Earth Day theme. You know, April 22nd is Earth Day, so you might want to teach your kids on that day or the day before the Latin root for Earth, which is terra or terra. Boys and girls, terra or terra means Earth. It's Latin. And of course, then you could brainstorm or help your children notice words in English that have that particular root in them. Are there many? Oh yeah. Look at these: terrace, terrain, territory, terracotta, terrazzo, subterranean, extraterrestrial, and Mediterranean, middle of the earth there. Oh my gosh, there's another 10 or so words we could easily add to that list there. But isn't that amazing? And you know, you would talk with your students. What do these words have to do with Earth? Well, terrace. You know, if you're going to farm on the side of a hill, you might want to terrace the land, flatten it out. Otherwise, you'll get a lot of erosion. Terrain. The terrain here in my part of Ohio near Lake Erie, they call it the Lake Plain. But if you go down to southern Ohio, you're going to run into the Appalachian, beginning of the Appalachians. The terrain changes. Territory. Before Ohio was a state, it was part of the Northwest Territory, land belonging to the United States of America. Subterranean, below the earth. We're talking about our fracking here in Ohio and getting oil from fracking the subterranean environment below the earth. Extraterrestrial, beyond the earth, and so on and so forth. So again, helping children notice these patterns is so valuable. There are, I think, about 25 or 30 words in English that have terra or terra in them that refer to earth or land there. And that's the batting average you want. One root can help you with lots and lots of words there. Now, if you happen to be working with first or second graders, you may be saying, well, terra, golly, that's kind of hard for kids. Okay, no problem with that. Then focus on the prefix there, sub. Tell your first, second graders that it means under. And you might say subterranean, below the earth. But then you could come up with other words too, like subtract, submarine, submersible, subway, and maybe a dozen other or so words. Help our kids as early as possible notice these roots there. Once you do that, then you can begin to notice them. Children begin to notice these things. Here's an article that appeared a year or so ago in one of the USA Today. GM goes greener, General Motors. Oh boy, they're in big trouble. Hope this bus company turns out better for them than their ignition switches. GM goes greener, pumping $6 million into an electric bus company. What's it called? Proterra. Oh, pro means for the earth. I wonder what what are the characteristics of that pus, protera? There, children begin to notice these sorts of things. Create word walls, so they notice them on the word walls. This is a 6th grade class, I believe, that they were working on 2 roots per week, before and after, ante and post. And they had a list of words: anterior, antebellum, and antecedent, antecessor, and postmark, postpone, posthumous, postscript, and so on and so forth. Again, making visible that which is normally invisible. There. Let's go back to my son. We pulled this out of that worksheet at the beginning of the day. One of the words that was on that list was bellicose, and he wrote it's an adjective and it means quarrelsome or warlike, and he's absolutely correct. What if we had known, if we were the teacher, had known that root there's a Greek root and it's B-E-L, and it does mean quarrelsome or warlike. What other words might the teacher helped our students? Well, how about these? Not only bellicose, but how about belligerent? Antebellum. The time, there's ante means before, it's the time before the Civil War in the United States. Rebel, rebellion, rebellious, and there's several other words there. You teach one root, you can learn, in this case, 6, probably even more words than that. That's the kind of batting average we want for our students there. And I might add, some of you are saying, yeah, Rasinski, this is pretty cool for upper elementary, middle, maybe even high schoolers, but come on, 1st graders? Well, we've been working with 1st graders, and their brains are pattern detectors also. And why not try? Now, this is an example from a 1st grader. Now, he has to work on a little bit on that prefix. It's not TIR, it's TRI, 3. But look at what this 1st grader was able to do. Tri plus cycle gives a meaning of 3 wheels. Tri plus athlete, 3 sports. Tri plus plets, 3 babies. Okay, tri plus pod, 3 legs. Tri plus color, 3 colors, and so on. Isn't that interesting? The French flag, I think they call it the tricolors there, and that's what it is. But even our youngest children, I think we underestimate sometimes what our youngest kids can do. Daniel Willingham, in his blog, just recently wrote about that sometimes we underestimate what our kids can do. They need support, of course, but if we know these roots, and we can help our kids really get a jump start on vocabulary. And again, we're recognizing, even our popular press is talking about this. New York Times, in their article about improving vocabulary using the New York Times, they talk about look for Latin and Greek roots even when you're reading the New York Times there. I wrote an article with my colleagues, Nancy Paddock, Evangeline Newton, and Rick Newton, on this. This appeared in the International Reading Association book called What Research Has to Say About Vocabulary Instruction. It was the introductory chapter to this book, and I think that's a recognition by the editors that Latin and Greek roots, teaching them in the elementary and middle grades, is something that we need to consider in our classrooms. So I also wrote a book. It's called Greek and Latin Roots, Keys to Building Vocabulary, with those same colleagues. We've been on this gig for quite a long time, and the results we have been seeing have just been amazing. Well, folks, 40 minutes. We've been into this. Here it goes by pretty quickly. I'm going to turn it over to Corey now, and she's going to talk about scientific learning, fast forward, and reading assessment, and some of the things that features that it has that can build vocabulary in our students. So, Corey, take it away.
Okay, so just before Corey gets started, this is Carrie again. I just wanted to do a more formal introduction for Corey. She's been with scientific learning now for, I think, 13 or 14 years. I've worked alongside of her for that long of a time. She holds a bachelor's degree in both general and special education and a master's degree in special education with a certification in the areas of educational, diagnostician, and mid-management. Please help me welcome Corey Arms.
Thank you so much. Right. Well, what I would like to start out talking with you about is just how we have products that help build vocabulary as well. The first one is Fast Forward, which is an online neuroscience-based reading intervention that works on strengthening reading skills by providing targeted practice in key areas such as vocabulary. Because our products were developed by neuroscientists, They include 4 key components that we call our fast power learning formula to create significant changes in brain function. And these components set the Fast Forward products apart from other programs working to achieve literacy. So first of all, we have frequency and intensity. Neuroscience research demonstrates that completing a set of learning tasks in a frequent, intense time frame accelerates learning. Adaptivity is important in order to keep students functioning at the optimal learning level, of 80% comfort and 20% challenge. The Fast Forward exercises adapt with each keystroke to individual skill levels and responses, and that keeps students continuously challenged but not frustrated, which is important. And the third component is simultaneous development, which means that the exercises develop major cognitive and reading skills simultaneously to produce reading improvements in learning, or lasting improvements in learning. And finally, timely motivation means that the exercises provide tiered rewards that are designed to maximize motivation from start to finish. So we have a variety of exercises in the 10 Fast Forward products that help with vocabulary building. I've listed some from the reading series, and those exercises include word families, categorizing words by meaning, and other activities. Our Resource Center and Reading Product Manuals also provide exercise word lists that would help with reinforcing vocabulary, creating word walls and other vocabulary building activities that Tim mentioned. So the next thing I want to do is show you a quick demonstration of the media. So hang on, I'm going to have to go back and share my desktop, and I will show you the exercise. So this is Canine Crew, and it's in reading level 3, and it works on pairing words as either synonyms or antonyms to build vocabulary. So in this example, they're matching antonyms, so let's see how it works. You can see the students finding the pairs, and there's always one left over. So the key with this is that the students have to be focused on the exercises and ready to move into the task of matching by either synonyms or antonyms, and they're going to have thousands of repetitions of these exercises. So you can see how fast that fast power learning components work to help reinforce vocabulary building activities. We have more than 250 research studies that prove the Fast Forward program can help build those content area skills and improve test scores. In this example, 94 elementary students who were low performing or receiving special ed services made significant improvements in their vocabulary NCE scores. And they made these gains after just an average of 17 days on one Fast Forward product. In this one, 88 ninth graders who were performing significantly below grade level used Fast Forward during the fall semester. They were pre-tested in September, post-tested in November, and with the vocabulary subtest of the Gates-McGinnity reading test. So you can see they showed some nice vocabulary gains within just a 2-month period. Vocabulary also is a focus in Reading Assistant, which provides individualized online reading coaching for students in order to rapidly strengthen vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension skills. And this is done through one-on-one guided oral reading practice. Reading Assistant focuses on vocabulary in 2 ways: the glossary and by incorporating common words throughout the selections of thematic units. One of the first things that students do in the program is to look up unfamiliar words in the interactive glossary. When they click on the underlined word in a passage, a glossary box pops up that gives them the pronunciation of the word, a definition, and the word used in a sentence. If the teacher chooses to have Spanish support for a student, he or she will also have the Espanol button to hear the word pronounced in Spanish. Some glossary words also have a Did You Know tab that provides additional information or to help just provide a broader knowledge base for the word. So according to recent research, children typically come to school with vocabulary at a certain point and leave school with vocabulary at the same point. The consensus among researchers and educators has been that we must close such vocabulary gaps for students to succeed academically and especially to deal with rigorous content. And this is best done by having children learn vocabulary implicitly in context of their reading selections. So in Reading Assistant, those selections are grouped into thematic units. And this is an example of the passages in the unit in the 6th-8th grade band on Egyptology, which makes sense because that's often taught within those grade levels. The first two selections are nonfiction, the third is fiction, and the last, obviously, is a humorous selection. So within those reading passages, there's common vocabulary. And I pulled some of the words that are used throughout that unit on Egyptology. So you can see that students are reading words repeatedly in the context of different types of text. So vocabulary is a deceptively simple literacy skill that everyone agrees is critical to students' academic success, but which often has been frustratingly difficult to address. And that is why scientific learning weaves vocabulary building activities through both of our product families. Tim, it is back to you to share a poem.
All right. Well, I was just looking at these words here that you had here, Carrie, and so many of them are based out of Latin and Greek roots. They're really embedded into your program. The games that the kids made on those studies are pretty amazing there. Well, I'm going to close it up here. We started with a song. I'm going to end with a song, but in between, I love this little poem by Emily Dickinson about words. And really it says what it's all about. She wrote, "A word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day." And indeed it does. When these words become part of our students, they have them for a lifetime. I was trying to think of a song that I could end with, and well, this is one that I love a lot. And again, it's my thank you for all the teachers out there, principals, educators. Mine is how I feel about you guys. And well, I'm probably going to ruin the song by singing it, but I'm going to give it a shot anyways. I'm just a frustrated lounge singer. It goes like this. You're just too marvelous for words like glorious and glamorous and that old standby amorous. It's all too wonderful. I'll never find the words that say enough, tell enough. I mean, they just aren't swell enough. You're much too much and just too very, very to ever be in Webster's dictionary. And so I'm borrowing a love song from the birds to tell you that you're marvelous, too marvelous for words. Well, you guys are marvelous. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Do we have time for some questions, Carrie?
We do have time for some questions, and I'm actually looking through all of the questions. There were several that came in while you all were presenting. I just need to find them. Okay, one question that came in, and I wasn't sure about this either, so Dr. Rasinski, if you can clarify this question. Did you say something along the lines of, as income has increased, vocabulary has declined? No, just the opposite. The opposite, okay, I thought so, but okay.
I know, I got a little tongue-tied there. That's from the E.D. Hirsch article. He was making. I don't know that he's claiming causation, but you know, it's it's something to think about. I guess that's what he was trying to do there.
Okay. And then you had presented a few slides ago on the Wordo activity, WRODO activity.
Yep.
Is this a document available for download? This person would like to try it with their ELL students.
Yeah. How can I get it to you, Carrie?
Just email it to me. Email it to me. Yeah.
It's a simple thing, and we have a 5x5 matrix for our older kids. As kids are younger, we make the matrix smaller, 4x4 or 3x3. I'll send it to you, and you can put it on the website, and people can just download it.
Okay, wonderful.
There's a note here. I'm looking here from Heather, and she asked the question. I guess I'm just going to go through this since I see it right now. She says, once you have a vocabulary word wall, what other kinds of activities can you do besides Wordo? Well, first of all, one of them is just read the words. If you come visit our reading clinic, we start and end it every day. We read all the words on the wall, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. But the possibilities are pretty much endless. We could play sort the words. Here's a set of 20 words from our word wall. Sort them into 1, 2, and 3 syllable words. Sort them by words that have Latin or Greek prefixes to them and words that don't. Sort them that words that are nouns and words that aren't nouns. So, again, their children are practicing the words, but they're always practicing from a different point of view. You could have this just create sentences and use at least 2 words from our word wall in your journal entry today, or maybe create a list of 5 sentences for your students in which they have to fill in the blank with one of the words from the word wall. So the idea is that these are the words we want the kids to become aware of, and then we just give them, opportunities to use those words in a variety of ways there. So yeah, there's lots of things you can do there.
Okay. Next question that I'm seeing here is, do you think that the increasing use of technology has led to a decline in vocabulary? Are there any studies that support this idea? If the answer is yes.
I'm not gonna touch it. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know.
Okay.
I would say, it depends on what technology. If you're talking about technology, instructional technology from scientific learning, those kinds of programs, those are great. But I think sometimes we see where, when you're trying to write something quickly on an email, you're not terribly interested in choosing just the right words. You'll come to with the first thing that comes to your mind. So I can see where that question may be coming from, but to be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, that's great. Let me see here. Let's see if there's another question. Do you have any helpful strategies for high school students who read on an elementary school level?
Well, much the same thing. These things can work with the Latin and Greek roots, word games. So you just kind of you try to choose the words that are related to the to their reading, the level of reading and level of vocabulary. I might add, if you read to your kids, we have high schoolers who may be reading at a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade level. We can read to them higher level stuff above 3rd or 4th, 5th grade. And if we harvest those words, we're going to be, we're not dumbing it down. That we're exposing the children, these high schoolers, to high school level words that will definitely have lead to improvements in vocabulary and in comprehension for them.
Okay. Next question is, how do you recommend testing 8th graders on these Greek and Latin roots and their expansive words? Any thoughts on that?
Well, if you could just go the traditional route there. If you have, say, we had all those tarot words, we could come to the end of the week and do a traditional assessment if you wanted to, or something like that. If you have an actual program, there's a couple programs that have come out on these that they actually have the assessments built into them, so that the teachers could use the built-in assessments. But it'd be the way that we normally check kids. There, we could create a passage with words that are deleted, and then students have to fit in the correct words into the blank. So, in order to do that, they have to understand the passage, and they have to understand the meaning of the words that to fit the context. So, a variety of ways. But I certainly sympathize with those of you who are thinking that the assessment has become so much a a part of teaching now that that's one of the first things that always comes to mind.
Okay, next question, actually, this one is for Corey. So Corey, this question is about Fast Forward. How much time should teachers allow for students to complete each Fast Forward exercise? And is it a school-based program, or do you recommend it for home instruction?
Well, it is often used as a school-based program. It's web-based, so it can be used, the school could use it and then also have the students do part of it at home. As to how long they use it or do the exercises, the protocol for each product is broken into 4 options: 30-minute, 40-minute, 50-minute, and 90-minute. Now, of course, most schools don't opt for the 90-minute, but what that would mean is they would get multiple exercises within either that 30, 40, or 50-minute block. And you can break it up. You could do part of it in the morning, part in the afternoon, that kind of thing. But the protocol itself will determine how many exercises the students get each day. And so while they're working on vocabulary, for example, they're also going to be working on the cognitive skills such as memory, attention, processing, and sequencing that research has shown are foundational to learning. And so that's what it's about. So it's all set up so it's very easy for the teacher to use. You set up the protocol, enroll the students, and the program will take care of which exercises they get each day.
Okay, I've got 2 more questions. I know we have like 2 more minutes before we hit the 1 o'clock hour, so I'm going to go through 2 more questions if we can make it through them. So this is for you, Dr. Rasinski. Have you ever reviewed or looked at a website called Vocabulary.com?
Oh, yeah.
And if so, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I like it. It's vocabulary. It taps into what we were talking about today. Those roots or morphemes. Yeah, I think there's some. It's a nice little program.
Okay, wonderful. Next question is, how important is spelling in the new CCSS? I would assume that's Common Core State Standards. Is vocabulary practice much more important? Is there research available?
To me, spelling is important. Spelling and phonics to me are the same thing. One is encoding and one is decoding. If you improve your spelling, you're going to improve your decoding there. So I think it's really important. I don't know that traditional approach of a 20-word list that the kids memorize is the best way, but something that we need our kids to be aware of. And I might add, by the way, that knowledge of Latin and Greek roots can help you with that. Do I have enough time to give everybody a quick quiz?
You do.
You do. Test. Okay, here's the word. I'm going to give it to you. You spell it, everybody out there. The word is androgynous. Androgynous. Which means having both male and characteristics of male and female. Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds.
And you can respond via the chat window.
Right.
I'm looking to see.
Mark got it. Tashika, you missed my letter. Most people spell it the way Tashika did. Androgenous.
Yep, that's.
It's not an E, it's a Y. Endrogynous. There. The idea is that I gave you the definition, having characteristics of both male and female. Male is andro, and of course we know female is GYN. We know that from the doctor there. So your knowledge of that could have helped you when you're spelling.
Oh my gosh, never thought of that. That's great. Thank you for sticking that little quiz in there. I got it wrong. I didn't have a Y.
Most people don't. The first time I did it, I messed it up too. But it's interesting. Folks, I think we need to wrap it up. I'll get back to you, Carrie, but I just want to say thank you for your kind attention throughout all these webinars, and I hope maybe to see you again in the fall when we turn these up on again. Thanks.
Wonderful. And again, I want to thank you, Dr. Rasinski. I love your presentation.